Heat shimmered off the desert floor, turning the long-range training field into a wavering sheet of light. Dust drifted in slow, lazy spirals as elite operators moved in practiced rhythms, rifles resting against their shoulders, voices low, confident, unbothered by the sun. Behind them, nearly invisible, a woman in a faded safety vest knelt in the dirt, gathering spent casings into a small canvas bag. Her gloves were worn thin. Her movements were careful, unhurried. She kept her head down until she didn't. While everyone else watched targets, she watched the wind flags. A laugh cut through the air. "Hey, brass fairy," one of the trainees muttered, not even trying to be quiet. Another voice followed. "What's she looking at? The clouds?" The snickers spread, light at first, then louder. A tall man with a commander's bearing turned slowly, his gaze locking onto her. He studied her for a moment, then raised his voice. "You done daydreaming, or you planning to join the class?" She stood, calm, dust brushing from her knees. The commander tilted his head. "Tell me something. Why is a casing picker staring at ballistic tables?" Someone laughed out loud. The air tightened. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to FOB Veteran Stories so you never miss these true tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Her name was Mara Kincaid, and almost no one on the range bothered to remember it. She was 29 years old, listed in the system as a civilian range support contractor, the kind of role that blended into the background of any military installation. Logistics assistant, equipment runner, cleanup detail. Titles that meant people looked through her instead of at her. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Mara lived in a narrow, sun-bleached trailer just beyond the perimeter of the classified training grounds. It sat alone at the edge of the desert, its metal sides rattling softly whenever the wind picked up. Inside, there was almost nothing. A narrow cot, a fold-out table, a single chair, one small shelf holding 3 neatly folded shirts, 2 pairs of pants, and a pair of worn boots lined up like they were on inspection. She woke every morning before dawn, long before reveille, long before the first convoy engines turned over. Her routines were precise. Coffee measured, boots laced the same way every time, hair pulled back in a low knot that never shifted. She stretched slowly, deliberately, like someone warming muscles that remembered more than she let on. On her table sat the one thing she never moved. A battered notebook, its leather cover cracked, corners softened by time. Inside, handwritten charts filled every page, wind formulas, mirage sketches, old range maps, tiny notes written in margins, some faded, some darkened by years of handling. She never wrote in it anymore. She only read. It had belonged to her uncle. She didn't say his name out loud. Mara avoided attention the way most people avoided pain. She kept her eyes down, her steps light. She never crossed a room faster than necessary, never stood in the open longer than she had to. If there was a corner to occupy, she found it. If there was a shadow to stand in, she chose it. People mistook that for weakness. They didn't notice the way she listened. She watched everything. From the range perimeter, she studied shooters not for bravado, but for habits. How they adjusted their stance when fatigued, how their breathing changed under heat, which instructors corrected with patience and which with humiliation. She timed the wind shifts with her internal clock, counting seconds between gusts, noting how mirage rippled at different distances. When she bent to pick up casings, she wasn't just cleaning, she was mapping. Mara spoke little. When she did, it was soft, careful, measured. Not shy, intentional. Words, like bullets, should only be released when they mattered. Her posture told a different story. She stood straight without trying. Her shoulders stayed loose, never tense. Her steps were balanced, almost floating, like she was always compensating for unseen variables. Once, a logistics officer commented on it. "You walk like you're on a moving deck." She had just nodded. She had learned that from her uncle, too. Years ago, she had been a skinny kid in borrowed boots, standing beside him on a rocky hillside, her face tilted up to the sky while he pointed at nothing. "You don't shoot the target," he had told her. "You shoot the air around it." She hadn't understood then. So he had taught her to see. He taught her how heat shimmered like a slow river. How wind layered itself, moving one direction near the ground and another 50 meters above. How birds drifted differently than dust. How silence carried weight. He never raised his voice. He never rushed. He never missed. That was before the phone call. Before the closed casket. Before the explanation that didn't fit. Mara didn't chase revenge. She chased truth. And truth took patience. That was why she was here. Ravenfall Range was one of the few places in the country where the kind of long-distance doctrine her uncle had once developed was still whispered about. Most of it had been archived, sealed, buried under newer systems and smarter machines. But people were still here. People who remembered. People who knew things. So Mara became invisible. She cleaned. She carried. She listened. She logged wind speeds in her head. She memorized firing lines. She noted which instructors emphasized math and which emphasized ego. She learned who talked when they were tired, who drank too much, who told old stories when they thought no one was listening. Every night she wrote nothing down. She only read. Her notebook never left her bag. When others went out for drinks, she stayed back, walking the perimeter of the range, counting steps, watching how moonlight hit the ridgelines. She practiced breath control without anyone noticing. 4 seconds in. 6 out. Heart rate down. Always down. No one asked her questions. No one cared. They thought she was just another worker trying to pay rent. And she let them. Because being invisible meant she could wait. And she had always been good at waiting. Waiting was discipline. Waiting was preparation. Waiting was survival. So when the SEAL commander called her out, when the laughter spread, when eyes finally turned toward her like she had stepped onto a stage she never wanted, she did not flinch. She did not defend herself. She did not explain. She simply stood there, hands relaxed at her sides, breathing slow, eyes steady. They saw a casing picker. She saw a range. And she was still waiting. The SEAL commander did not look away from her. He took his time, eyes narrowing slightly, like he was trying to decide whether she was a distraction or an opportunity. Around him, the trainees shifted their weight, some amused, some uncomfortable, all waiting for the tone he would set. Mara remained still. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. "You've been staring at my flags for 10 minutes, he said. "That's longer than most of my people look at their scopes." A few of the trainees chuckled. Mara said nothing. The commander took a step toward her, boots crunching in the gravel. "So I'll ask again. What exactly are you studying back there?" She lifted her eyes slowly. Wind behavior. That was all. The laugh this time was louder. A few heads turned. Someone whistled. Someone muttered, "No way." The commander tilted his head like he was humoring a child. "Wind behavior," he repeated. "You here to write a weather report, or did you get lost on the way to the janitor's closet?" More laughter. A few people clapped. Mara felt none of it hit her, not because she was numb, because she had learned long ago that humiliation was just noise. She took a slow breath. He wasn't done. "You know," he said, turning back to his formation, "I've got operators here who've spent their whole careers learning what you think you're seeing from the dirt. You telling me you know something they don't?" The way he said it turned curiosity into accusation. Mara met his gaze. "I'm not telling you anything." That made him pause. "Then why are you watching?" he asked. She considered the answer. "Because it's interesting." The laughter returned, but thinner now. Less confident. The commander smiled wider. "Interesting," he repeated. "I like interesting." He walked back to the firing line, then turned sharply. "All right, brass collector, Since you're so interested, let's hear it. Tell us what you think you're seeing. A few of the trainees glanced at each other. Some leaned forward. Others folded their arms. Mara didn't move. I didn't say you could stay quiet, he said. I know. The tone of her voice, calm, unreactive, made a few of them stop smiling. What would you have done in that moment? The narrator asked. Would you have laughed it off? Apologized? Or stood there and let the world decide who you were without explaining? Mara chose none of those. She looked past him, toward the ridgeline, where heat shimmered like a transparent tide. The winds cross-layered, she said. Ground flows east-northeast, upper drifts pulling south. Mirage is stacking. A few people blinked. The commander let out a short laugh. You been watching YouTube? She shook her head. That's not from YouTube. Now the laughter wavered. One of the trainees whispered something. Another leaned closer to his friend. The commander squared his shoulders. All right, he said. You want to talk shop? Let's talk shop. He reached for his rifle, lifted it slightly, then rested it again. Let's say I give you a shot. One shot. You hit, I apologize. You miss. You go back to picking up what falls out of our magazines. A ripple of amusement moved through the line. Mara didn't answer immediately. He mistook that for fear. Too much pressure? He asked. No, she said. I just need to know what you're actually offering. That was not the answer he expected. Meaning? He asked. Meaning, are you offering me a real shot, she said, or a performance? Someone snorted. The commander's jaw tightened. Careful. I am. He studied her again. Longer this time. Then he smiled like he'd just found something entertaining. Fine, you want real. I'll give you real. He gestured toward the far ridgeline. You see that orange disc? Mara nodded. That's a standard long-range target. We run drills there for our best shooters. Today we're going to make it special. He paused. Distance? One of the trainees asked. The commander didn't look at him. 4,000 meters. Silence. Not laughter. Not whispers. Silence. A few of the trainees turned to each other, confused. One of them actually laughed once, then stopped when no one joined. That's not, someone muttered. That's not a training shot, another said. That's not even a competition shot, a third whispered. The commander folded his arms. Exactly. He looked at Mara. Congratulations. You just earned yourself a legend-level challenge. Mara absorbed the number. 4,000 meters. Her face did not change. She did not smile. She did not frown. She nodded once. All right, she said. That single word unsettled them. You sure? The commander asked. Yes. Because I don't want excuses. I won't make any. A few people stared at her now. The commander stepped closer. You miss. You don't get to blame wind, or equipment, or me. I wouldn't, he laughed. You've got confidence, I'll give you that. She shook her head. No, I have math. That earned her another laugh, but it was thinner, sharper. He handed her the rifle. It was heavy. Precision built. Tuned. She accepted it carefully, like it was something living. She did not rush. She didn't shoulder it immediately. Instead, she looked at it. Then at him. What ammunition? She asked. A few brows lifted. The commander blinked. Standard. She waited. He sighed. 77 grain. Muzzle velocity, she asked. Someone whispered, she's serious. The commander gave the number. Temperature? She asked. 89, someone answered. Altitude density? She said. Now no one was laughing. They were listening. She stepped forward, knelt, then stood again, shaking her head. I need to shoot from higher ground, she said. Excuse me? The commander asked. The mirage here is unstable. I'll lose vertical consistency." He stared at her. "You're picky," he said. "I'm precise." Someone behind him murmured, "She's not bluffing." Mara set the rifle down carefully and pulled her notebook from her bag. The leather was cracked, old. She flipped it open. No one said a word. She did not use a phone. She did not use a tablet. She used a pencil. Her fingers moved lightly. Numbers, arrows, tiny diagrams. She was not performing. She was solving. The commander watched, arms crossed, skepticism slowly giving way to something else. "What's that?" he asked. "My reference. You got an ad for that?" "No." That answer landed heavier than she meant it to. A few of the trainees shifted. She looked up. "What's your barrel twist rate?" He blinked. Then he told her. She nodded. "Spin drift will push right," she said softly. "Not much, but enough." Someone whispered, "She's right." She didn't hear it. She stepped back, eyes on the ridgeline, fingers tracing invisible paths in the air. She was reading the desert. When she finally shouldered the rifle, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. She adjusted her stance. She exhaled. She waited. And the crowd, without being told, stopped making noise. No one wanted to be the person who broke whatever was happening. She closed one eye, then opened it, then closed the other. She shifted slightly. She did not fire. Seconds passed. The commander scoffed lightly. "Nervous?" She didn't answer. A minute passed. "Window's not right," she said. "What window?" someone asked. She didn't explain. Another minute. A gust of wind rolled through the range, soft but persistent. She lowered the rifle. "Now," she said. The word was barely audible. She adjusted. She inhaled. She exhaled. And then, she didn't shoot. She waited. That was when the room changed. Because no one who was bluffing would wait like that. No one who was pretending would ignore an audience like this. This wasn't bravado. This was discipline. This was someone listening to something no one else could hear. The laughter did not return. The murmurs stopped. All that remained was the sound of wind. And every single one of them realized something at the same time. They were not watching a joke. They were watching a professional, and none of them knew who she really was. Mara adjusted the rifle with movements that were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial, not flashy. Not rushed. Her fingers slid along the stock, finding contact points without searching. When she wrapped her hand around the grip, the skin along her knuckles stretched just enough for the scars to show, thin pale lines, old and clean, the kind that didn't come from accidents but from repetition, from work, from recoil, heat, and metal. One of the trainees noticed. He leaned toward the man beside him and whispered, "Those aren't shop cuts." The other didn't answer. Mara shifted her stance, feet angled slightly, weight centered. Her shoulders dropped. Her spine aligned. The rifle settled into her frame like it belonged there. She wasn't holding it. She was wearing it. She exhaled slowly, the way swimmers did before sinking underwater. "Mirage is boiling," she murmured. The commander frowned. "Boiling?" She nodded, eyes still on the ridgeline. "Upward distortion. Means thermal columns are colliding. It'll flatten soon." A few heads turned. "That's old phrasing," one of the older instructors said quietly. Mara didn't hear him. She rolled her neck once, gently, like someone easing into a familiar posture. "I'm going to aim left of target," she said. "Left?" the commander asked. "Wind's coming right." "Yes," she said. "But not at altitude." Someone shifted. "How do you know that?" a trainee asked. "I can see it," she replied. That earned her a few looks. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small metal tool. It wasn't digital. It didn't light up. It didn't beep. It was a hand-calibrated wind calculator. Old. polished smooth by use. One of the instructors blinked. "Where did you get that?" Mara paused. She almost answered. Almost. Instead, she said, "It works." She placed it on the ground beside her knee, angled it toward the ridgeline, then set a thin strip of fabric next to it. "What's that?" someone whispered. "Thread drift test," another murmured. "Haven't seen that in years." Mara adjusted the rifle again. Her breathing slowed further. She wasn't ignoring them. She was tuning them out. "You're not using the system's ballistic solver?" the commander asked. She shook her head. "Too many assumptions." "Assumptions?" he repeated. "Yes. Like what?" "Like that the air behaves the same everywhere," she said. "It doesn't." One of the trainees swallowed. Mara's vocabulary was wrong. Not incorrect. Wrong era. She wasn't using modern phrasing. She wasn't talking like someone trained by software. She was talking like someone trained by a person, by hand, by eye, by repetition. She shifted again. When she reached forward to adjust the bipod, the sleeve of her vest slid back just enough for something dark to show inside her bag. A patch, not new, not decorative, worn. One of the trainees leaned forward, squinting. "Is that?" "Quiet," someone else whispered. Mara didn't notice. She was watching a heat ripple change direction. She pressed her cheek to the stock, then lifted it again. "No," she murmured. The commander's patience thinned. "What now?" She didn't look at him. Microburst. "Give it 15 seconds. A few of the trainees exchanged glances. 15 seconds passed. The mirage flattened. Mirage settled again. One of the instructors cleared his throat. "She's right." No one laughed. Not this time. Mara's fingers brushed the trigger, but she didn't pull. She inhaled. Then she said something that made one of the older men stiffen. "Wind is breathing." The phrase wasn't modern. It wasn't tactical. It was poetic, outdated, and deeply specific. The older instructor turned sharply. "Where did you learn that phrase?" Mara hesitated. "Just a fraction. Long enough for everyone to see. My uncle used to say it," she said. The instructor's face changed, not shock. Recognition. He didn't speak. But his posture shifted. Mara recentered. She adjusted the scope manually. No presets. No digital overlays. She calculated in her head, lips barely moving. One of the trainees whispered, "She's not using a computer." Another whispered, "She doesn't need one." The range was silent now, not respectful. Uneasy. This wasn't part of the script. This wasn't entertainment. This wasn't humiliation anymore. This was something else, something older, deeper. Mara shifted her elbow slightly, testing stability. Her forearm scar caught the light, not jagged. Linear, like from repeated recoil against a metal rest. The kind that formed after thousands of shots. Someone noticed. No one said anything. She leaned in, then pulled back. Again. She was listening. The wind changed. Barely. She exhaled. Then she whispered, "Now it's honest." The phrase landed oddly. Several of them blinked. "What does that mean?" someone whispered. The commander didn't answer. He was watching her hands. They weren't shaking. They weren't tense. They were calm. Comfortable. Like they had done this more times than anyone on that line. Mara closed one eye, then the other. Then opened both. She waited. The desert held its breath. And for the first time since this had started, no one was thinking about her job title. No one was thinking about the vest. No one was thinking about jokes. They were thinking about one thing. They were wrong about her. And they didn't know how wrong yet. Mara did not fire. She did not even settle fully behind the rifle. Instead, she lifted her head and scanned the desert like someone studying a map that only she could see. The ridgeline shimmered, its edges wavering as heat rose from the ground. To most eyes, it looked like distortion. To hers, it was information. She tilted her head slightly, as if listening. Her eyes moved from the orange target to the space above it, then below it, then to the stretch of air between. She wasn't measuring distance. She was measuring behavior. Wind did not move as a single thing. It came in layers, like sheets of glass sliding over each other. One layer skimmed the sand, tugging at loose grit. Another rode higher, invisible, pushing against the mirage like a slow current under ice. Mara raised her hand, palm open, and let the air brush her skin. Then she closed her eyes, not in prayer, in calculation. The SEAL commander cleared his throat. "You planning to shoot today, or are you waiting for a postcard?" A few nervous chuckles rippled, but they died quickly. Mara did not answer. She lowered herself into position, then stopped halfway. "No," she murmured. She rose again. She stepped sideways, studying the slope of the ground. Then she walked several meters to the left, boots crunching softly, and knelt. She picked up a pinch of sand, let it fall through her fingers. She watched how it drifted. Then she stood again. Someone whispered, "What is she doing?" "She's mapping," the older instructor said quietly. The commander frowned. "Mapping what?" "The air." Mara returned to the rifle and adjusted the bipod, raising it slightly. She leaned in, pressed her cheek to the stock, then pulled back. Again. And again. She was not indecisive. She was testing. She looked through the scope, not at the target, but at the space around it. She whispered numbers under her breath. The crowd had stopped reacting. They were just watching now. Mara reached into her bag and pulled out her notebook. She opened it. No one spoke. She flipped to a page filled with hand-drawn curves and arrows. She studied it, then the sky, then the ridgeline, then the notebook again. She scribbled something new. One of the trainees leaned toward the older instructor. "She's not using any of the systems." The instructor nodded. "She doesn't need them." The commander folded his arms. "This is turning into a show." Mara looked up at him. Her eyes were calm. "I don't perform," she said. "I solve." That quiet certainty landed heavier than any boast. She returned to the rifle. She adjusted the scope manually. Not by clicks, by feel. She breathed in through her nose, slow and controlled, then out. Her chest barely moved. She waited. Seconds passed. The desert hummed. She shifted her elbow slightly, redistributing her weight. Then she whispered, "Upper layer just changed." No one else felt it. But she had. A faint ripple in the mirage flattened, then reversed direction. She frowned. "Not yet," she murmured. The commander scoffed. "You're going to miss your moment." She did not look at him. "I'm waiting for it." "For what?" he asked. "The window." "What window?" "The one that doesn't care about us." A few of the trainees swallowed. Mara closed one eye, then the other. She inhaled. Then she opened both. She was not tense. She was patient. The wind shifted again. Her fingers tightened slightly, then relaxed. "No," she whispered. She lifted her head, scanned again. The mirage near the target began to lean, not ripple. She watched it. Then the dust near the ridge twitched. Her eyes narrowed. Her breathing slowed further. She lowered her cheek to the stock again. This time, she didn't pull back. The crowd leaned forward without realizing they had. Someone behind her whispered, "She's not nervous, she's hunting," someone else replied. The commander laughed softly. "You know, this would be a lot more impressive if it actually went somewhere." Mara did not look at him. "I am not here to impress you," she said. "I am here to be correct." She lifted her finger from the trigger, then placed it back. Not squeezing, just resting. She exhaled. The mirage shifted, flattened, aligned. Her body stilled. She was no longer watching. She was listening. The desert fell quiet. No wind, no distant engine, just heat, just breath. She did not move. Someone coughed. The commander rolled his eyes. This is ridiculous. He stepped forward. Mara spoke without looking at him. Don't. That single word stopped him. Not because of volume, because of certainty. Why not? He asked. Because you will ruin it. A few of the trainees stared at him. He hesitated. She closed her eyes for one heartbeat, then opened them. Her finger pressed slightly, then stopped. She whispered, almost. The mirage above the target flickered. The upper layer stalled. The ground flow hesitated. She felt it in her skin, her spine aligned. Her breath paused. And then, now, she whispered. She did not fire. She waited. A fraction of a second. Then she fired. The shot cracked across the desert, sharp and clean. Recoil pushed into her shoulder. She absorbed it. Did not flinch. Did not blink. She held position, watching. The bullet's flight time stretched. The air seemed to hold its breath. No one spoke. No one moved. Seconds passed. Then more. Someone whispered, "That's impossible." Mara did not move. She was still watching. Then the spotter gasped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. The entire line snapped toward him. His voice trembled. Impact, center, silence. Not the kind filled with sound. The kind filled with disbelief. Mara exhaled. Slowly, she lifted her head. And for the first time since this began, she looked at them. Not proudly. Not defensively, just calmly. The commander stared, his mouth opened. Closed. He said nothing. One of the trainees whispered, "No way." The older instructor swallowed. The commander finally spoke. That's not possible." Mara tilted her head slightly. "It is." "How?" he demanded. She shrugged. The air allowed it. The phrase unsettled them. She stood slowly, careful not to jostle the rifle. She stepped back. The crowd didn't move. They were afraid to. Someone whispered, "Who is she?" Mara bent, picked up her notebook, slid it back into her bag. She adjusted her vest. Then she said something that no one expected. "I'm not done." They blinked. She walked back to the firing position, set the rifle again, and began recalculating. The older instructor whispered, "She's going to do it again." The commander's face tightened. "No," he said. "No, that was enough." Mara shook her head. "That was luck," she said. His eyes widened. "What?" "That was a lucky window," she said. "I need a clean one." The trainees stared at her. "You just hit a 4,000-meter target," someone said. She nodded. "Yes." "And you want to do it again?" someone else asked. She nodded again. "Why?" the commander demanded. "Because I don't want you to think I guessed." That was when the room truly shifted. Not because of what she had done, but because of how she saw it. Not as victory, not as triumph, but as incomplete data. Mara knelt. She studied the air again. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. The desert breathed with her. She waited, and this time everyone waited with her. Because no one in that place, no matter their rank, their experience, or their pride, could pretend anymore. This was no longer a spectacle. This was mastery, and they were standing inside it. Mara waited again. Not because she needed more time. Because the air did. She watched the mirage flatten, the heat shimmer pause, the invisible layers of wind line up like pages in a book finally settling. Her breathing slowed until it was barely there. Then she fired. The crack of the rifle tore across the range, sharp and final. She did not move. She did not celebrate. She stayed exactly where she was, eyes fixed on the distant ridge, body still, as if listening for something only she could hear. The silence stretched, longer than before. Too long. The spotter leaned forward, squinting through his scope. His fingers tightened around the edge of the platform. He swallowed. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "Direct hit." No one spoke. The orange disc at the ridge now bore a fresh mark near its center, clean, unmistakable, impossible. The commander stared through his binoculars, then lowered them slowly. His mouth opened. Closed. He did not know what to say. Mara exhaled. She finally lifted her head. And that was when the black SUV rolled onto the range. It moved with quiet authority, dust trailing behind it. No sirens, no announcements. Just presence. Several instructors straightened instinctively. The vehicle stopped. A door opened. A tall man stepped out, gray hair cropped close, uniform pressed, posture precise. His eyes swept the range once, then locked onto the target display. "Who took that shot?" he asked. No one answered. The commander cleared his throat. "Sir, it was—" The man raised a hand. He walked toward Mara instead. His gaze dropped to her hands. Then her stance. Then the notebook partially visible in her bag. He stopped 3 feet from her. "You didn't use the system," he said quietly. "No, sir," Mara replied. "Good." That single word carried weight. He looked at her more closely now. Then he said a name. Not hers. Her uncle's. The air changed. Several of the older instructors stiffened. The commander blinked. "Sir?" The man did not take his eyes off her. "I know that stance," he said. "I know that math." "I know that patience." Mara said nothing. "You're his," he said. Not a question. A fact. Mara nodded once. The commander's face drained of color. The senior officer turned to him. "This woman isn't a contractor." He paused. "She is a legacy." No speech followed, no explanation. Just silence, the kind that carried meaning. The commander slowly removed his sunglasses. For the first time since this began, he did not look at her as an obstacle. He looked at her as something he did not understand. And suddenly, no one was laughing. No one was whispering. They were standing in the presence of something they had almost missed. And they knew it. No one spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full of recalibration, of people quietly rewriting what they thought they knew. Mara stood where she was, hands resting loosely at her sides, shoulders relaxed. She did not shift her weight. She did not look around to take in the faces. She kept her gaze forward, steady, unassuming. But everything around her had changed. The trainees who had laughed earlier now stood differently. Their arms were no longer crossed in judgment. Their backs were straighter. Their expressions had softened, not into smiles, but into something closer to awe. One of them swallowed hard. Another lowered his head slightly, like he was embarrassed to have been seen before. The commander stood frozen, binoculars still dangling from one hand. His mouth was set, but not tight. It was uncertain. Searching. He turned slowly, scanning the line of his people. He saw it then, the shift, the way they looked at her now. The way they were no longer waiting for him to define her. They had already decided. The senior officer stepped back, giving Mara the space back. He did not announce anything. He did not need to. His presence alone had already rewritten the room. The commander cleared his throat. It sounded loud. He took one step toward her, then another. When he reached her, he stopped. He removed his gloves slowly, deliberately. He placed them under his arm. He stood at attention. And then he saluted. It was not sharp. It was not ceremonial. It was real. A ripple went through the crowd. Several of the trainees straightened instinctively. One followed, then another. Not all of them, but enough. Mara did not react. She did not return the salute. She did not need to. The commander lowered his hand, then exhaled. "I was wrong," he said. The words were simple. They were not dressed up. They were not defensive. Just honest. "I thought you were watching us because you wanted to be seen," he continued. "I thought you were curious, or bored, or trying to prove something." He shook his head once. "I didn't realize you were working." Mara looked at him now. Not with pride, not with satisfaction. With quiet acceptance. He swallowed. "You didn't owe us anything, and I made you carry our jokes anyway." The trainees watched him closely. Some of them looked stunned. The commander lowered his gaze. "That won't happen again." He lifted his eyes back to her. "Not here." Mara nodded once. That was all. No speech. No flourish. Just acknowledgement. The senior officer gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. Then he turned and walked back toward the SUV. The moment passed, but it did not disappear. People began to move again, slowly, cautiously. No one rushed. No one laughed. No one filled the space with noise. The energy had changed. A trainee stepped forward, hesitating. He stopped 2 steps from Mara. "Yes, sir," he said out of habit, then corrected himself. "I mean, ma'am." Mara did not correct him. He swallowed. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "How long have you been doing that?" She thought for a moment. "Long enough," she said. He nodded, like he understood. Another trainee stepped forward, then another. No one crowded her. They gave her space. They asked quieter questions now, not to test her. To learn. The commander stepped back, allowing it. For once, he did not control the moment. Mara did not stand taller. She did not let it change her posture. She did not smile. She simply remained exactly who she had been before anyone noticed her. Invisible. But no longer unseen. And that was the peak. Not the shot. Not the numbers. Not the recognition. The moment when power did not roar. It softened. It bowed. And it stayed quiet. By the end of the day, the range looked the same. Targets reset. Flags fluttering. Casings scattered across the sand like they always were. And Mara was back where she had started, kneeling in the dust, gathering brass into her canvas bag. No escort, no spotlight, no announcements, just work. Some of the trainees watched her now, unsure what to do with what they had seen. A few of them offered to help. She shook her head gently and kept moving. Her hands worked with the same calm rhythm as before. Nothing about her had changed, but everything around her had. The commander did not speak to her again that afternoon, not because he was avoiding her, but because he was letting the moment stand without trying to control it. Near dusk, when the range had thinned and the heat had softened into long shadows, someone approached her. It was the youngest trainee. He stood a few feet away, shifting his weight, clearly nervous. "Ma'am?" he said. She looked up. He swallowed. "Would you ever teach this stuff?" Mara did not answer right away. She wiped her hands on her vest, looked out at the ridge, at the flags, at the air. "I'm not an instructor," she said. "But you could be," he replied. She shook her head. "That's not the same thing." He nodded slowly, then asked, "Then what are you?" She considered that longer. "I'm a student," she said, "of the air." That seemed to satisfy him. He nodded. "If you ever decide to teach, I'd like to learn." She didn't respond. But she didn't say no. Later, as the sun dipped low, the older instructor found her near the supply shed. "You carry old knowledge," he said. She looked at him. That's rare, he continued, and dangerous to keep to yourself. Mara stared at the horizon. I didn't come here to be known, she said. I know, he replied. They stood in silence. Then he said, if you ever want a classroom, you have one. She did not answer. That night, back in her trailer, Mara opened her notebook. For the first time in years, she wrote something new. Not a formula, not a diagram, a name. The Trainees. She stared at it, then closed the book. Somewhere between sleep and waking, her uncle's voice came back to her, not as memory, but as feeling. You don't shoot to be seen. You shoot to be true. The next morning, she showed up early. Same vest, same boots, same quiet. But when the youngest trainee waved at her from across the range, she nodded back. And that was how it began. Not with applause, not with stories, but with permission. The moral was simple. True strength does not announce itself. It waits, and when it finally moves, it does not demand respect. It earns it. Some of the strongest warriors you will ever meet do not wear medals where you can see them. They do not speak loudly. They do not demand rooms go silent when they enter. They move quietly, they observe patiently, and they carry legacies no one asks about. Mara was never looking for recognition. She was looking for truth, for discipline, for a way to honor what came before her without turning it into noise. And in doing so, she reminded everyone on that range of something simple and powerful. Greatness does not announce itself, it waits. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who served quietly, loved deeply, or carried more than they showed, then you are part of this community. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more FLB veteran stories. These stories keep the courage alive for generations to come.